Hey, what's going on, guys? Good to see you guys. Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be talking a little bit about, well, the future of farming a simulator, especially considering the launch of another certain game that's related to farming simulator. That's Project Motor Racing. And for those who are not aware, if you're not sure, haven't heard of this game, Project Motor Racing, yes, I know, a racing game and farming simulator. What do they have in common? Well, Project Motor Racing is developed by a studio called Straight 4 Studio. However, it has been published by Giants Software, which of course is the publisher and developer of Farming Simulator. Now, Giants has traditionally or previously let publishing go to another company called Focus Entertainment at one point in time. They're without their own sets of controversy, but back before Farming Simulator 22, Giants decided to start self-publishing. Now, don't get me wrong, Giants has had their issues with publishing their own titles as well, with release dates getting mixed up and the like. But regardless of which, they have been the one involved with the publishing of Project Motor Racing. So you may think that, well, one may not affect the other. However, I still think there's more going on between the two companies that we may not be, mostly because Project Motor Racing has been said to be running on the Giants engine, which is the engine that drives Farming Simulator. That's kind of a funny little pun there, I guess. So, some way, somehow, Farming Simulator, the Giants engine, is running this racing simulator game. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is, well, the initial reaction to Project Motor Racing, we're about a week in now from launch, has been pretty negative, unfortunately. It has been a bit of a mess, to be honest. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to be here giving you a whole review of Project Motor Racing. We're not talking about that. I'm going to be talking more about what this means, well, for Giants Software and Farming Simulator, more importantly. Now, for your own sakes and mine, I guess, I could tell you I've had experience with Project Motor Racing. I've had early release on this. Thanks to Giants for sending it my way. Appreciate you guys doing that. And to be perfectly honest, I am not a sim racer. That is not my thing. I have enjoyed racing sims in the past. However, even trying to get into iRacing and the like, I have never been able to fully dive in and get into it. However, I can appreciate them, and I have been enjoying Project Motor Racing for the most part. That being said, I do not have a full racing sim setup. I do have a rather entry-level wheel that I've been using along with it, and yeah, it's been fine with that entry-level wheel. I have been able to post some relatively competitive lap times, I guess, against the AI. I haven't done any multiplayer yet. So I have been able to find some enjoyable, as long as I'm staying to the entry-level cars, because I've heard the upper-level cars are much more difficult to control and unrealistic in the series. I don't know. I haven't tried it that far, but the entry-level cars, yeah, I've been able to have some fun with it. And also, my personal notes, controller was absolutely undrivable at the time. I don't know now where we stand 1 week in, but on launch and pre-launch, using a controller was pretty much impossible. Now, who cares about my opinions? Like I said, I'm not a sim racer at heart, so does my opinion really matter on that? Whatever. But the community as a whole, over on Reddit Critic, you can see what our average reviews. I mean, even the critical reviews are 61, and I mean, you could trust those for what you will. I don't know. But the ones I typically go over are the user scores, and 3.1. Oof, that's all I can say about that. Even over on Steam, I mean, mostly negative. The other problem I have is this is a full price title. I mean, I'm $100 Canadian if I want to pick this title up. That's like a non-starter. Your reviews, yeah, mostly negative. You could read through a lot of these. People are not happy, generally speaking, with a lot of these. Now, before we get into too much of this, things are looking a bit better now with the latest patch. We're going to talk a bit more about that, but definitely broken on release. Why is this not working properly? Not optimized. All sorts of problems with control. Not realistic. Yeah, not fully fleshed out. Not ready for launch is what a lot of the reviews are saying on here. And so what does that mean for actual player base, to be honest, as well? Because those tend to correlate a little bit, and it's not looking great here either, guys. I mean, our peak 24 hours is currently at 428. You can see at launch it peaked up at over 2,000, but that was maximum right there. And now we've settled into this, like, we're under 100 players. It looks like at certain times in certain times dates. That's not looking very good. You can only imagine the multiplayer. This, of course, is only being over on PC. This is through Steam. Of course, it's on Xbox and PlayStation as well, so it's not taking into account those players. But I think you can correlate these numbers over to those other platforms as well. Unfortunately, very negative reviews, and I think a lot of them are probably justified from what I have seen. And more importantly, actually, guys, the customer reviews. I mean, all it takes is going over to YouTube right now. Let's actually bring that up. And I made sure to go into a separate unused account for this, so I'm not getting any of my algorithm. But Project Motor Racing, possibly the worst sim racing title I've ever played. What? Looking for the good side. Here we go. Someone's looking for the good side of Project Motor Racing. At least we're getting some side there. Why I see problems. The main reason I'm not happy. Physics thoughts. Why both hyped and concerned about Project. Well, this is a month old. That doesn't count. But it got way worse. The biggest racing game controversy of the year from some other accounts here. Let me think here. The Project Motor Racing has extremely interesting handling. Is it sim or arcade? You could think what that would be, right? That doesn't look like it's going to be a positive video. We keep on going. Is this real? Yeah, exactly. My honest thoughts. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Is it really that bad? Jimmy Broadband, of course. Project Motor Racing needs a lot of work. It's bad. It's just so many negative reviews over on YouTube. Most of the sim racing world tends to be under the agreeance that it's, well, undrivable almost. That's really unfortunate. So why? I mean, we know why that is, of course. Okay, we've talked about this. You could go through any of the reviews. They all seem to be relatively similar. The problem really it comes down to is they've tried to make a sim racer and not really managed to nail the physics 100%. That is the focus of it. There's not a ton of other game modes in it. It is career, single race, and multiplayer for the most part. That's it. That's all you get. So you really have to nail the sim racing side of things 100%. And there's a number of other titles already out there that, well, I would probably argue they do it better. So how do you come across and get into that market? Because I want to see them succeed. To be perfectly honest, guys, I really want to see this succeed. The big selling point really realistically comes down to, well, bringing this to the console market, right? That is going to be the biggest one. PC players, you have a few more options, of course. Console players tend to be more limited on some of the more racing-centric racing sim. Right, once you get to what on Xbox Forza and PlayStation is a Gran Turismo, that tends to be where it stops. And this is supposed to be almost like a level above that, where it's more simulation based, way more simulation, less arcade, where those, I would argue that both Forza and I think most people would say Gran Turismo Grand Theft Auto. Gran Turismo is still maybe closer to that sim, but still not quite to the likes of, was it Enzo Coretta? Is that the name of it? I don't know if that's the right name. Let me double check. I think that's the name of it. Assetto Corsa. Oh, I was so close yet so far. So close yet so far. But like I said, those are the titles that would be considered, I think, iRacing, Assetto Corsa, probably the top echelon, down to Gran Turismo, Forza, and then Need for Speed. I don't know, like that would be kind of the layering almost. Project Motor Racing was supposed to be up as high as iRacing and Assetto Corsa, to my understanding, as far as sim racing goes, and that would bring that over to the console side as well. Now, unfortunately, it seems like as of launch, they did not accomplish that. That was not brought to the market. The game that was promised was not brought over, unfortunately, as much as I wish it was. To be perfectly honest, this is not me here to laugh about this. This is something I find actually kind of troubling for a number of different reasons, as I think there's a lot more invested into the Project Motor Racing series from the Giants side that makes me concerned about Farming Simulator and what's the future going to hold there. Now, fortunately, there has been already a couple of patches. There was a day one patch that was released that fixed a couple of minor things. I didn't notice too much of a difference. However, there was also another patch 1.5.0.1 released just this last little bit over the weekend here, and it's fixed quite a few things, to be honest. And from what I've seen from a couple of reviewers, mostly smaller YouTube content creators, saying that a lot of the stuff has been fixed that they were concerned with. So, I mean, this is nice to see. We're actually getting some patches and things just haven't been cast aside. But unfortunately, my question for that is it already too late for Project Motor Racing? I mean, we have had games in the past that have had huge release problems and managed to fix the ship, right the ship, if you will. Cyberpunk 2077 most recently is one that comes to mind, right? It was released in a state that was unplayable on console, even on PC. Mid-range PCs had all sorts of problems playing this, and this was a massive game at the time, of course, on launch. Another huge title back a few years now, almost 10 years, No Man's Sky on the launch of this title as well. Huge promises made, massive failure on launch. I have no videos on this that are, look at this website. This is terrible. What is going on here? Regardless of which, this was a huge flop as well at the time. It was panned by most critics, and now most of these games, guys, most of these titles, both No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk, are kind of revered in the gaming world as some of the best titles available from old, like when they come on sale. These games are definitely games worth picking up if you're interested in those genres. But huge problems, huge flops at release that were thought to be going into obsolescence, and managed to turn it around and became great titles. Now the question, I guess, is can Project Motor Racing do something similar? I don't know. That's the question. Now, some things that Project Motor Racing may have going against it is, of course, it's a much more niche title, I would say, right? Where you're looking at Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky, both are like a first person or an adventure shooter style storyline. There was much more there's a much broader audience, of course, for that game. In fact, I mean, just take a quick look at something here. Yeah, you can see actually, this is Cyberpunk's player base charts right now. You can kind of see, well, where it started off at over 1 million players live down to under 20,000. Did it ever get under 10? Yeah, it looks like around 15,000, about the lowest. And now we're sitting, on average, like today we're at 37,000, 46,000 was the peak in the last 24 hours. It's still managing to hold a strong player base because of the amount of updates and patches. You can see this was the first major patch, I believe, was right in here, and then the second where everything kind of, there we go, the Edge Runner update was released right in there. A couple of fairly large, substantial patches released that have brought players back in and managed to keep the player base nice and solid on this game, even considering its critical acclaim, or failure, I should say, at launch. Now with Project Motor Racing, like I said, it's a much more niche title, and because of that, you saw we only have upwards of a couple hundred people playing right now, maybe a couple thousand. What do we have again? A couple hundred people? Yeah, maximum of a couple thousand. How do you justify putting that much resources into updating and fixing this title now that you have that small of a player base that are going to be interested in trying to keep tabs? And then on top of all that, so you have that smaller player base, much smaller player base that are actually interested in it right now. Even if you do update this title and make it so that it is 100% better than even the best current racing game that's out there, those small players, how many of those are actually going to be able to get out to the general public and let everybody know that the game's been updated and fixed and it's actually better than what it was? Will anyone even care anymore? And I don't know what the answer is to that, unfortunately. And that's kind of where I look at this, as saying that Project Motor Racing's in trouble with that. Are they able to be able to get the media hype now that everyone's panned on the title? Will they be able to get out and get market saturation and be able to let people know that there's been updates even 1 week out that have fixed this game? I really hope they can. That's all I can say. That's where I comes down on. I want good titles coming that are partnered with Giants, especially. I'm a huge farming simulator fan, of course, and I want to see Giants do well, because that usually should mean that Farming Simulator do well. But that being said, there's a whole question that I have with that as well. And that question simply is, what was the plan here? What are we planning with new titles? Is Giants trying to get out of the game development game and become more of a publisher? Is that what they want to do? Is that where the money is? I honestly don't know how that all works, what's involved in the industry. Obviously, you can see the main page here. They're showing off, well, their newest racing game has been released, and it's not their game, but they're right on featured main page. Of course, you go over and you get Farming Sim 25, of course, information. However, yeah, we're looking at, of course, Project Motor Racing as front and center. 4 million copies sold. Wow, that's impressive. Look at that. Anyways, that's one of my concerns. So how much financial commitment do we have from Giants into Project Motor Racing? Like I said, it's a different developer. Straight Force Studios is the developer. However, they're using the Giants racing engine, the Giants base engine to run the title. How much, you got to think there's got to be more involved from the Giants side into Straight Force Studios. It can't just be, we're just publishing, hands-off approach. Once the engine itself is involved, you've got to think that the Farming Simulator team somehow in way, shape, or form has been more involved into, well, Project Motor Racing, and that means that's less focus on Farming Simulator for me. And I don't want that. I want to see more focus on Farming Simulator. It's great that we have this other title. If they could nail this title and get finances and make money off of this title, and learn to make Farming Simulator better because of Project Motor Racing, then yeah, of course, I'm game. Unfortunately, what it seems like now is that Project Motor Racing might be a failure. So just how much or how many resources are being taken from the Farming Simulator side over to the Project Motor Racing side now? So I really don't want to lose anything on that side, of course. So that's my thoughts on those. Now let me know down in the comments. I have a couple questions for you. First of all, do you think Project Motor Racing can turn it around? Will they be investing in the game to make it comparable to the other sim racers like I spoke about? And secondly, do you think anyone's going to care? And lastly, what do you think about the opinion or the comparison between Farming Simulator, the relationship between Farming Simulator and Straight Force Studios? Do you think that's beneficial, or do you think that that's going to be a hindrance to Farming Simulator? Once again, I don't know what the actual relationship is between the two companies. I feel like there's more to it than just publisher developer. I think there's definitely more of a coexistence there. So let me know in the comments those 3 questions. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Of course, drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new around the channel for more Farming Simulator stuffs. All the stuff's Farming Simulator related. We'll be back in the next one. We'll see you guys then. This is Klutch. Over and out.